Good morning, I'm Captain Derek Westman, and I'm here with my father-in-law, Richard Hastry. And first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to the VA and all those that took part in beginning the GI Bill on your 75th anniversary. So we'd like to take a minute to tell you our story and how the GI Bill has impacted our lives. So first, for me, my father joined the U.S. Air Force in the late 40s, and probably the biggest impact was that he met my mother. And the second thing was he was able to parlay the GI Bill into some training that he received from an airline. Didn't stay with the airline, but he parlayed that into a job with New England Telephone, which is now current day Verizon. And also he inspired a sense of service in me, and I've been serving for 25 years now. But even more of an impact, when the email came in about the 75th anniversary, I initially thought of my father-in-law and how the GI Bill has impacted his life. So, Dick, if you want to take a minute to tell us a little bit about your story. First of all, kind of when were you born? What was your upbringing like?
I was born in Quincy, Massachusetts. Shortly after I was born, our family moved to Dorchester, which is a section of Boston. And I grew up in Dorchester and Mattapan, another section of Boston. Graduated from high school in 1953. Had a nowhere job for about a year and a half when I volunteered for the draft, which was kind of common in my day. By volunteering for the draft, you went into the service ahead of your normal time. They were drafting guys who, as I recall, they were probably about 23 years old. I was 19, so I took the place of a 23-year-old guy who would have normally been drafted. Went in the Army of December of 1954 and got out in December of 1956. And right away, myself and a friend of mine went over to Boston University because we were able to afford school because of the GI Bill. No one in my family had ever been to college, nor did we even think of going to college because it was just beyond the means of the family. And that's how I get started with, introduced to the GI Bill. And if you did 2 years in the service, it got you about 36 months of education, which was enough for 4 years. We received $110 a month, which paid the tuition, which in those days, when I started, was $600.
Great. So I wish it was that now. Yeah, but right. We'll talk about the post 9/11 GI Bill in a minute because that's impacting our lives as well.
Sure.
So where did you serve, and what did you do? What was your military specialty?
Okay, went in at the Boston Army base, got sworn in at the Boston Army base. They drove us to Fort Dixon, New Jersey. We were there for about a week, and then I was flown out to, along with several other people, obviously, to Fort Riley in Kansas. Did about 6 months in Kansas, took a basic training there. Then I went over to Germany. Was stationed in we were part of the 10th, I was part of the 10th Infantry Division, which took the place of the Big Red One, which had been in, that division had been in Europe since World War II. So this was 1954, yeah, and the operation was called Gyroscope. We took their place. It was in the 43rd AAA Battalion, which was an anti-aircraft battalion. I was basically, I had several jobs, but most of my time was spent as a gunner on an M16, which is a half-track, and we had a 450 caliber machine guns mounted on a gun turret. Left there after the 16 months and came home. Let me say this, that I was stationed in a small town called Erlangen, which is about 10 miles north of Nuremberg. which is where they had the war trials,
Right.
which is famous for the war trials.
Were they going on while you were there?
Oh no, they were long.
They were
long
complete,
over.
yeah.
Yeah. But you could still see some damage in the cities from World War II. I don't know if the German people left them there as a reminder, or I don't know why. They just hadn't been cleaned up, and I don't know why they were left.
So after you finished your service, how did the GI Bill change your life?
Well, again, when I get out of high school, I had a nothing job, going nowhere, like a lot of the guys, hanging around on the corner, and we know no good was going to come of that. So we decided it gave you an opportunity to further your education, to get an education. And when I graduated from BU, took a lot of job interviews and ended up getting a job eventually with the government, with the post office, transferred over to the Internal Revenue Service in 1963, and worked there for 27 years and retired. And I shudder to think what might have happened if I hadn't been to college. I think that the GI Bill really did me personally a lot of good, a tremendous amount of good.
Really helped you get your foot in the door and get started, and you turned that into a really successful governmental career. So you stayed in government service.
Yes. Yes.
Not necessarily serving in the military, but still serving through the IRS.
Right.
That's fantastic. Do you have any other comments you want to make?
Well, there's a lot of guys I know that had stories similar to mine, that families couldn't afford to send them to college, couldn't afford obviously to go to college as a young guy, and a lot of guys do credit the GI Bill with getting them on their way to a successful life, whatever that might be defined as. And I think it's probably the best single program I've ever known the government to come up with. I mean, you earned it, I guess. They told you that if you did this, they'd do that for you, and enabled you to become a better person and a better member of society, I hope.
And certainly have impacted my life, and obviously.
Well, I always say that the GI Bill I'd rank as the second best decision I ever made in my life. The first was when I got together with your mother-in-law, and we got married, and she's still with us after 50-something years of marriage. We're still together, and that's my number one feat.
As it should be. As it should be.
Right.
And obviously the GI Bill was a great decision for you as well. As you said,
Right.
the second best decision, and I kind of feel the same thing. The second best decision for me was to join the Navy first, was to ask your daughter to marry me.
Yes.
You mentioned how it's impacted your life. The GI Bill, because of the post 9/11 GI Bill, is still impacting your grandchildren now.
Yes.
Because of my service, we were able to take the GI Bill, and now I can transfer it to my 5 children. So each of them will get a little piece of that in one form or another to help pay for their college education in the same way that the GI Bill helped pay for yours. And the government has paid for a lot of my education as well. So Dick, thank you very much for your service, and to the VA and all those who had a part in making the GI Bill and post 9/11 GI Bill part of all of our lives. Thank you for that, and you continuing to do great work. So have a great day. Thank you.